Welcome to Becoming Fearless, the personal growth podcast for you if you are ready to overcome fear and step into your greatness. Our purpose is to help you overcome your limits, have loads of fun along the way, unlocking your fullest potential in life, business, health and relationships every single day. I'm your host, Charlotte Carter, a high-performance coach and entrepreneur with over 20 years' experience. I've supported many highly driven, talented people like you who dream big and are ready to take action to overcome what's holding them back. Each week, my guests and I will be sharing hacks and habits on how to build self-belief, courage and confidence to master your mindset and navigate your emotions so that you can reach your human potential in a way that feels light, fun and easeful and helps you become fearless. Let's go. Hello and welcome to this week's episode. I am so excited to have one of my greatest friends and my podcast coach and just a super epic person, Emma-Louise Parkes. I am delighted to have you here on this episode.
Do you feel the pressure because I helped you set the podcast up that you're now interviewing me on the podcast?
I feel like I am the student. I am the student and the pressure. But let everyone know a little bit about you.
So I am a great friend of Charlotte's, as she just said. I'm also the CEO and founder of the Ambitious Introvert, which is a coaching and personal development company for the quieter ones amongst us in society, but who still want to reach their potential and do massive things.
And you are so good at what you do. And let's go back to when you first realised you were an introvert.
Oh, gosh. That was so life-changing. And it's funny because I ask people on my podcast about this. I'm like, what was the moment that you realised? And a lot of the feedback I get from them is, oh, there wasn't a moment. There was just, all these different layers added on and these different things. For me, it was like Thunderbolt, of course. It was like the moment. I heard someone talking about introverts on a podcast and I went, oh, this all sounds familiar, and a lot of these traits and ways of being are things that I thought were kind of wrong with me and a little bit weird. So I went online, took the Myers-Briggs test, it came back INFJ, I read it, and then I cried. And I was like, I exist, I actually exist, there's a thing for me. So yeah, it was pretty profound, and that was, I think, 2017.
Yeah, because I think when we talk a little bit about your job history, you would never have had the job that you have, maybe, if you knew that you were an introvert when you did your job as a air traffic controller.
Yeah, so it's an interesting one because I would say they're probably split 50-50 because I was there for 17 years and for 10 years of that I was involved in training air traffic controllers as well. And I can definitely see now that I know so much more about introversion, extroversion, which trainees were which and how they respond differently and how they process information. But the actual job itself can be quite insular because you can be sat there on your own just randomly issuing instructions to pilots. But there's a lot of stimulus and there's a lot of noise and it's, busy ops room and you're surrounded by people. And that aspect of it, can be quite draining of energy. I used to get to days off and be like, why am I so tired? And I always used to say it's not the job that tired me out, it was the environment. And that's such an important thing for introverts, whether it's your home environment, your work environment, the way you're socializing. It's probably not necessarily the interactions or what you're doing that's draining your energy. It can literally be the music's too loud or there are too many people or, I'm too hot for a prolonged period of time. And now I'm just like overstimulated.
It's such an interesting topic, and let's just dive in a little bit into how we met, because I think people listening to my Becoming Fearless podcast might think, but Charlotte, you might not necessarily be an introvert in any which shape or form. But I
think that's the understatement of the day. You might not necessarily be an introvert, Charlotte.
So let's say that I am wholeheartedly an extrovert. But there are moments in my life, for certain, where I have had massive environmental stimulus derailing me, for certain. So I think there's kind of like a few things going on in a conversation that I'd like to have with you, which is about introversion, extroversion, and then this highly sensitive side of people. Because let's dive into that. Can you just explain a little bit between introvert and extrovert so that people have got a clear understanding before we dive a little deeper?
Yeah, absolutely. So introversion and extroversion are a spectrum. So it's like the law of polarity, where you would have 100% extroverted at one end, 100% introverted at the other end, and very few people are actually at those extremes. So it is a spectrum, and people can dance in the middle of it and kind of dip into both. But generally, when we hear what it means, we tend to identify very strongly as one or the other. And it comes down to two things. It comes down to how we recharge our energy, which is the main factor, I would say. So introverts recharge their energy by being alone and going inwards and turning inwards. Extroverts recharge their energy by drawing it from other people, by being around people, by being stimulated, external sources. Like extroverts, if they spend too much time indoors on their own, will start to wilt and literally be like, I need people to fuel me. Introverts will be the opposite. If they spend too much time, bless you, if they spend too much time out surrounded by people, and that's not to say we hate people or don't like them or anything like that. Those are like gross misconceptions of introversion. But the interactions take their toll on our energy, and we just simply have to withdraw and go inwards to be able to fuel ourselves back up.
I remember when we first met, and I had this whole image of you being this person who you might be in your room all the time, you might not, you might be fairly quiet, you might be quite shy, and that was all like blown out of the water. It's like, oh, okay, so that's like that idea of an introvert is nothing like that at all. I think that's so funny and so true, because there's this misconception of, I'm sitting quietly in the corner of the library reading my book. And yeah, I do read a lot of books, but I'm not quiet or shy or nervous or any of those things. And, the mastermind that we met in, I remember Elena saying to me, she was like, you've been a revelation, because she also had that idea that, oh, you're going to be really meek and quiet. I'm like, no, but I do need to go, all right, this has been amazing. I need to go and be on my own now. Yeah, and it was definitely a revelation for me, for certain. And I think a revelation for me in terms of how I am as well. So if we talk a little bit about extroversion and talk a little bit about the friendship that we have and how you supported me. So people might necessarily see me and the way that I run my business and very, very extrovert led. I'm quite dynamic. I want to stand on more stages. I'm here for the masses, and it's all very people orientated. But when we met and we were going on a retreat together and we were planning how we were going to get there, we were flying out and it was for a week, and I'd never done this kind of thing. And I was kind of freaking out. Anxiety was high, and I don't really get anxiety. There were all multiple things going on. And I was like, I don't think I can do this. I definitely didn't feel fearless. Everything was coming up for me. And this is where you kind of just like swept in and supported me on multiple levels. It was like, here's my travel partner. Right from the minute I went on the plane with a different person that was on the mastermind, and then right from the minute I got to my first hotel, you were there super supporting me, because for me, this was like externally so different to anything that I'd ever experienced. And there was a lot of feelings of guilt, worry, anxiety. How's everybody going to cope at home? Who am I to do this? There was a lot of me questioning myself. And that was like, if people might think that an extrovert would be able to cope with every situation. And for some extroverts, for certain, that would be great for them. But for me, it was like I was the polar opposite.
Absolutely. And it's such a good point, because again, it's this kind of myth that we have of like, oh, extrovert means confident and introvert means quiet and nervous, when, like I say, it's nothing to do with that. It's down to how we recharge our energy. So you can be around people, and that is obviously a big part of you and your life. for much longer than I could. And that's not to say, like I say, I don't enjoy it or I'm scared of it or nervous of it. But yeah, I think the standard rhetoric we see is like extrovert means dynamic and confident and they can do anything and be big and bold. And introvert means, quiet and shy and hiding away from video and all of that. But yeah, that's a great example because there were some moments that you were very close to not going on that trip. There was so much growth in that for you to even get to that point. And again, let's look at, life experience and conditioning. I've traveled on my own for years. I'm mid-40s. And since I was 18, I've traveled on my own. It doesn't bother me. I don't think about it at all. And being an introvert, I'm quite happy in my own company. Whereas this was a big deal for you. You were leaving your family. You were traveling alone. It was a whole new experience. So regardless of introvert, extrovert, anything else, I think it's important to look and what feels easy to someone because they've been doing it for decades can feel so hard to someone else. And, whatever we do in our life, on our growth journey, I think that's so important to remember. The first time of anything is always going to feel sticky.
And I remember because I was like, I can't be in your space too much. I know that you're going to go in your room. And then you're like, I'll just meet you for dinner in like 3 hours. I was like, oh my God, I've got to sit in my room on my own. What am I going
to do for 3 hours?
Which was like your heaven. And I was like, oh God, I'm going to have to go walking. I'm going to have to go to the gym. I was all over the place. And then I got into it. I did get into it.
You did get into it. You did. You settled in really well. You did a little bit of introverting.
I did. I got used to being on my own.
And then actually at the end of the 10 days or whatever, you were like, oh, this is quite nice. I went and I did some journaling and I spent some time on my own. I was like, yes, go Charlotte.
Yeah, it was like massive growth because there was a whole, and this might resonate with a lot of people that listen to this podcast, there was a whole permission piece for me. It was like, this is like a real treat. This is space for me. I'm not like responsible for anything else in this moment. It's just me. And so once I, like Emma-Louise said, once I leaned into that, I was like, oh, actually, this feels really good. I do really enjoy this on multiple levels. So let's talk a little bit about highly sensitive people. What would you define that as for people that might be listening? Because I think this is important as well.
This is a really important one. And again, it crosses over quite a lot with introversion. So quite often the things that I'm talking about on my podcast, in my brand with my clients can be a mixture of both. It can be quite difficult for me to delineate it because I am both and I have that lived experience. But what I will start by saying is, if you said the term highly sensitive person to me 10 years ago, I would not have resonated with it because I'd have thought, oh, that's someone that's in tears all the time and that's like super emotionally reactive and sensitive. And, if you call them a name, they're going to start crying and all of that. And I didn't resonate with that at all. And then I actually bought the book, The Highly Sensitive Person by Dr. Elaine Aron, because I thought it could help a client of mine and a friend of mine because they were very reactive. And I thought, oh, I'm going to read this because it might help them because they're, quote unquote, so sensitive. This could be useful. And I read the first 5 pages of the book and I went, oh, this isn't about that. This is about me. And it's actually about the sensitivity of our nervous system. So they estimate around 20% of the population are highly sensitive, and it just means that our nervous system is so much more receptive to stimulus. So what a non-highly sensitive or a neurotypical person may hear, let's say, volume, it could sound twice as loud to us. We really get affected by minute changes in stimulus. So a small temperature change could really throw us off. And our nervous system, and it's not always conscious, it can be the subconscious stuff as well. Our nervous system can get overloaded very, very quickly. And one way that I describe it is like layers of different things. If Charlotte, you and I were out and we're in a coffee shop and we're having a chat, great. I'm going to love that because I love you and I love coffee and I love chatting. So it's all good. If there's then a background conversation going on, my attention is going to be kind of grabbed by that as well. Even though I'm trying to listen to you, I'm going to get distracted. If there's then a coffee machine making a lot of noise and then there's a siren going off outside, and then I'll suddenly notice the lights are really bright, and all of a sudden these different layers of stimulus can just floor me, like can really, really floor me. So high sensitivity is actually nothing to do with introversion. It's just that the need to withdraw and destimulate is the same as the need to withdraw and recharge. I would say, and I think you would identify, you are definitely highly sensitive. And you are highly sensitive as well because you are very empathic and open and obviously very spiritual. And I think when we look at all of those things, there is a connection piece because it's about your nervous system sensing and feeling stuff all the time.
I think it's such an interesting topic, and I will put that book in the show notes for people to dive into if they resonate with this, because if Emma-Louise has read it within 5 pages, she's like, yeah, that's me. I'm going to read that book. I was
like, oh, I've got this all wrong. It's not about people crying too much. Like it's literally, I was like, that's me. I do that. I feel like that.
Yeah, I'm excited to read that. I personally would identify as like a mega highly sensitive person on lots of levels. For me, it's definitely all of those stimulus. It's definitely like the sound of stuff, and exactly like you've described, the layers of stuff. I get to a point where it's like, I can't do it now. So like I was really concentrating on the coffee scene. I was really concentrating on it, but now, hang on a minute, we've either got to leave, or I'm starting itching my body, or there's some sensory stuff going on. And I find it fascinating that in some situations personally I can cope better than in others, even though it might be the same situation. So in some days I feel more regulated to be able to go into it. And that's obviously because of how my nervous system was before I went into that scene. And there's so much around the nervous system. And for me, my journey has been, now that I know and now that I can regulate it, now I'm like, this is like such a superpower, because now I feel way more in control.
It's so true. And, you know, this idea of, why did I do that? Look, a good example of this is sauna and cold plunge. We did cold plunge together in Mykonos. I do it here. I've got a membership. Some days I'll go in the sauna and I can sit in the sauna for 45 minutes and I feel amazing. And I get out and I go in the cold plunge for 3 minutes and I feel like I'm, you know, on top of the world. Some days I'm in the sauna and after 20 minutes I'm like, I'm too hot. I need to get out. There are some days that I get in the cold plunge and it's painful and I'm like, I can't stay in. I'm just going to dip in and get out. And, you know, yeah, there can be mindset issues around that, but also it can be our nervous system just going, you're not regulated, you're tired, your hormones are all over the place, you haven't slept enough, maybe I'm not hydrated enough, you know, all of these different things. Maybe I've not been grounding enough or doing those practices that you say, like you say, change everything. So it's really important to know that, yeah, that of course there are, you know, we get in our own way and we tell ourselves stories and, you know, Charlotte and I do that all the time and we're very familiar with it. And we do those kind of things, but sometimes you're just not as regulated, so you're not as resilient, and actual physical stimulus will hit you differently. We always laugh because I wear a lot of Lululemon. I'm wearing Lululemon at the moment, of course, and there's a reason for it, and it's because they don't have seams and they don't have labels. So they're very, 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 very comfortable for me. If I wear clothes and there's a seam digging in or there's an itchy label, it's like you say, that sensory input piece, I get very, very distracted to the point that I notice that I'm grinding my teeth. And then I'm like, why am I grinding my teeth? And I'm like, oh, it's because there's a seam in my sock and it's like curled around my toe and now I want to kill myself.
Yeah, there's so many layers, isn't it, to this, that like once you start understanding and choosing what you're going to learn about yourself. And I think that so much of this is people listening will be at different stages of their awareness of their own growth. So sometimes, and definitely for me in the past, I wasn't aware of any of this stuff. I was just like going through life on hyperspeed, in very much like I'm going to be in the very much masculine doing energy, and it's all going to be about helping everybody else, until I had my big aha moment. And then it's like, oh, okay. And now, and first of all, when you go on that kind of journey, it's like, why didn't I know this? Why didn't I know that? How come I haven't spotted this? And you go deeper and deeper, and then the multi layers. And I know Emma-Louise and I have had loads of conversations about, you know, being forever learning in life, but also being able to accept that where you are now is exactly where you're meant to be.
Yeah, that's a big balance because we're both 1-3s in human design. I love to learn, you know, not from a, again, I think we have to be careful. Some people like to learn because they're looking for external validation of their own talents. And they think, oh, if I get more qualifications and certifications, then it means that I'm successful, or it means I'm a better person. But there can just genuinely be an intrinsic love of learning, which is what you and I have. But then also balancing that with, okay, but I can also stop for a little while and just be. And that's okay, that it doesn't have to be this continual quest. I think when you are ambitious, like we are, and like people listening, it can be so easy to be like, all right, finish that. What's next? What's next? What's next? And I used to be like that with books. I didn't actually integrate them. I would read them and be like, yeah, that's great. And then like straight on to the next thing. And I did a challenge in 2023, actually. I was like, I'm only going to read books that I've already read. And if they resonate with me, I'm going to actually take it and integrate the information and actually use it before I start reading the next book. And it was a challenge to be that slow because like I'm usually like, yeah, a million miles an hour. But it is interesting because what's the point in learning all this stuff if we're not actually using it and integrating it?
And that's so powerful, because there will definitely be people that resonate with that, because it's been very much my journey. It's very common, isn't it, for so many people to be like, yeah, I want to learn more, because they might have the pattern of not good enough. They might have the actual strength of learner in their VIA or in their Clifton. It may be one of their top strengths. So it's just then choosing how you're going to reframe it. I love that exercise that you did in 2023. I don't know if I could do it.
Oh, it was such a challenge. It was such a challenge, which is good. But yeah, and it enabled me to look back. I looked over the last 10 years. So it's books I'd read over the last 10 years when I started my personal development journey. And it was actually very interesting to compare, because some of them that I loved at the time, and I thought, these are life-changing, like, the information in this book is mind-blowing. I read and went, oh, no, that's a bit basic, because obviously I'm so much further along in my journey. And there were other things that I read and I was like, this is as relevant to me now as it was when I first read it. So, yeah, highly recommend that. Like, go back to the start of your journey and see the things that you blew your mind, see if they still do.
And also, I think there'll be a part of the ones that are the ones where the work is for you in terms of your growth, and they're the ones that you've probably like, oh, I'm going to jump to the next book now because I'm not quite ready to do the work that's actually in that, because of that stage in where you are in your growth, which is all the wonderful mindset games that we play. Let's just talk about energy, because it's a powerful topic, isn't it? We love it on multiple levels. Talk to me about how you help your clients in terms of managing their energy.
So it's such a huge thing for introverts, because most of the reason that they don't reach their potential, well, two reasons. One is that because we go inwards and we have a very deep processing method, our mindset is imperative. So we can get very, very stuck in our own head, overthinking. We have an interesting amount of thoughts as introverts, and we give them a lot of weight. So we can get stuck in that rather than taking action. But the other reason that we don't reach our potential is we run out of energy. We get drained because we are in a very extrovert-driven society. If, like we talked about, if we're highly sensitive and we haven't recognized that, there are these energy leaks maybe going on everywhere, day to day, where we're having all these interactions with people. It's noisy. We're not spending enough time alone. So you can have the best will in the world, and you can be, the cleverest person, and you can be doing all the right steps. But if the mindset isn't solid and you don't know how to get out of the overthinking, and if you are not focusing on owning your energy and you're getting depleted, you will plateau. So I work with my clients really on understanding both of those things. So we look at not only like, what are your thoughts? Oh, let's change them and make them better. But how do they do that? Because there's so much in coaching and in the online space of like, oh, just think better thoughts. Well, that's fine. But how? How do I do it? So we actually walk through and create reframes and create new thoughts, and then create structures and repetition and patterns that they can work with to imprint those as their new normal, as we like to say. And then from an energy piece, again, it's looking at where are the leaks. Boundaries are a big one, not saying no to things that don't serve them, not prioritizing time alone, thinking that they're resting because they're not working, but they're actually running around doing a million things and still being stimulated. So it's getting really clear on what's your priority? What do you want to achieve? And what actions do you need to take to get there? And cutting away the things that are really taking their energy from it.
And I have experienced Emma's wisdom many, many times. I think I am like a secret introvert in some ways, because I will disguise myself as an introvert to be able to get her wisdom. But you do work with extroverts as well, do you?
I do. It's so funny because the brand is obviously has introvert in it, and I talk about so many introverted traits. And I would say about 20% of my private clients test as extroverts when they take their Myers-Briggs. But the caveat there is they are all highly sensitive, or they're all very much more towards the middle of the spectrum, where they test as extroverted, but actually when they feel into it in their bodies, they're like, yeah, I'm more introverted. That's actually what I need to be doing. I need to be spending time on my own, and I need to be recharging that way.
And I think for some people, when they first come into your world, they might not have that awareness. So they may actually see themselves as that more extrovert. And then when you start working with them and peeling back the layers and them actually stepping into the truth of who they are, then they're like, oh, actually, I've been wearing a mask, or I've been dancing around the truth. And now that we've got to this stage, I actually am more comfortable and feel more at ease and more relieved and more able to share that that's who I truly am.
Yeah, and a lot of corporate conditioning is that extroversion is the way to be, that's the best way. Be louder, speak up more, do all of these things, do loads of networking, go out, have drinks with people, that actually could be quite challenging energy-wise to a lot of introverts. The other thing that's been really beautiful in this work, I'd say, in the last 5 years is clients that I've had with children, and when we dive into introversion and high sensitivity, that they go, oh, I've recognized now that my children are highly sensitive, and then because they've got that knowledge, they've been able to adapt how they parent. And as a highly sensitive child, you can be quite misunderstood. You can be told you're high maintenance, fussy, complaining about things, or just get on with it, and the things that you're meant to enjoy, like go out to a party or something that's like so stimulating for a highly sensitive child. So that's something that I'm really proud of in this work, that I know it's had an impact on the next generation of sensitive introverts too.
I love that. The ripple effect of your work is just epic. So how can people, I've got 2 more questions. I could talk to you for hours, but how can people get hold of you?
Best place to find me is my podcast, which is the Ambitious Introvert podcast. And everything is available on the website, theambitiousintrovert.com. So you can click through and listen there. And if you wanted to contact me directly, the email address, my LinkedIn and my Instagram are all linked super easily on there. So theambitiousintrovert.com.
Fabulous. I totally recommend going and listen to Emma-Louise's podcast. Like I said, Emma-Louise is like one of my greatest friends, and she's also the person who has been teaching me all about the podcast and how to get it up and out there, how to structure it, all of the behind the scenes. So that's also one of her extra skills. Do you still offer that service? Is that something that you can help people with?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not something that I tend to market, but I've done it numerous times. I think I've been involved in 11 or 12 podcast launches now with my clients, or people coming and working with me for intensives, including yours. So yeah, I've had my podcast for 3.5 years, and it's just a medium that I'm very, very passionate about. So always happy to help people set that up.
Epic. I'm sure people will be getting in touch. And then the last question there, which is a question that I ask all my guests, and we've touched on it a little bit today, is what is the most profound book you've read that has allowed you to become fearless? I mean, it's a big question. I'll talk for a little while.
Question.
While you can think. So becoming...
It's a big... No, it's fine. I can
get Go for it.
I'm saying... It's a big question, because when I went back over the last 10 years of books last year, I had nearly 600 books that I'd read. So that was significant. But I would say A Happy Pocket Full of Money by, and I hope I pronounce this correctly, David Cameron Gilcandy. So pop the link and check it. But someone mentioned this, and I downloaded it and I didn't read it. And then when I went back and did this challenge last year, I found it and I started reading it. I was like, I don't remember reading this the first time round. And I checked and I hadn't. That book is, it's like everything that I've learned over the last 10 years and everything that I guess we know at a soul level, but it's just all together on paper. And it's very repetitive, which some people won't like, but that's what our subconscious needs. And it just explains so many things. It's not actually about money. This is the funny thing. It's called Happy Pocket Full of Money. I don't think it talks about money until the last chapter. Yeah. It's about energetics, and it's about universal law, and it's about our energy, and it's about all of the ways that we can have mutually beneficial relationships, about how we can give value and know that will be reciprocated, even if it's not in a transactional basis. It's just beautifully written and really easy to read, and I dip in and out of it all the time.
Epic. That sounds epic. I'm going to get that one. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for being here on the Becoming Fearless podcast. I have loved it, and we do need to meet up soon and do some of the things that we keep talking about. Anything else that you would like to add?
I would like to say thank you very much for having me, and congrats on launching the podcast. And this has been great. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Take care of yourself, everybody, and make sure you tune in to Emma's Ambitious Introverts podcast if you want to listen to more about what she has to say. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning into this week's episode. I hope that you're feeling energized, fearless, and inspired to take action today to stand in your greatness. I share even more tools and resources on my I Dare to Leap email newsletter. By signing up, you not only get early access to the I Dare to Leap products and services, but you also get brand new podcast episodes delivered straight to your inbox every Monday, meaning you'll never miss your weekly dose of becoming fearless energy. Sign up now at www.idaretoleap.com/newsletter or click the link in the show notes below.